Welcome, everybody. I can't see you, so you have to say good morning or something. Good morning. Okay, so there's at least 5 people in the audience. My name's Chad Zed Hauer, also known as kudzu, and I'm not going to go into what kudzu is today too much, but if you want to know, it's this funny green plant in the bottom left, and I'll give you a couple quick facts. It grows 2 meters a week, and you can't stop it. They tested 12 herbicides on it. 10 of them had no effect. 2 of them made it grow better. And effective herbicides often destroy the soil, such as napalm. If you want to know more about the plant, you can go to my website, kudzuworld.com, and click What is Kudzu? But it's not a site only about kudzu. There's plenty of technical information there as well, and I'll cover a little bit of that in a little bit. The map in the top right, these are countries I've spoken in. This is what I do. I travel around the world and give presentations and make funny demos, etc. The session today is software safety, and I'm going to discuss a little bit today what that is. I believe that many of the errors in our code today could be prevented if we simply provided better user interfaces. Now, what I mean by that is they don't all have to look like Office 2007. They don't all have to be designed by a graphic artist, but that we design interfaces in such a way that we actually lead users to make mistakes. And many of these mistakes lead to crashes, bugs, etc. Now, it's not an excuse for us to then go write buggy code if we make a good user interface. But if we make a usable user interface, we can reduce the number of crashes and the number of bugs. What I'm going to do today is I'm going to show you a lot of slides from the real world. I'm also going to show you software. And the reason this is if I just stood up here today and I showed you, look at this piece of junk software, and this piece of junk software, and this piece of junk, it might be funny, it might be entertaining, which I hope this session still is, but you would say you're just picking on us as software developers. Well, I'm a software developer, so I feel I can pick on my own industry. But I like to compare it to the real world, and we can see that it's not just a problem we're suffering, but it's really a system-wide problem. And we can look to these examples for solutions as well. Because many times we say, well, how do we fix that? And I believe if we look in the real world, we can find solutions for that as well. Now, this is the architecture track. And at one point, I almost renamed this session to putting the user interface back in the UI, or U plus I equals user interface. And then I noticed yesterday, Simon had a talk putting the user back into architecture. And so I saw his track and I thought, uh-oh. So I went to his session, which was very good, by the way. And they actually complement each other very well. So we have very different content. Now, how many of you went to Simon's session yesterday? Did you guys like it? That was kind of like, yeah, well, you know, I gave him a 3. How many of you liked his session? Okay, it was a good session. I think you'll like my session too. They're very complimentary. The other one that I liked was Why Software Sucks. How many of you went to that one? How many of you liked that one? That was even less than Simon's session. Okay, but I'm going to assume you guys liked it. And then I noticed he had a couple of the same slides I did, which we didn't steal from each other. We just happened to notice the same bad software applications. Fortunately, I have a massive archive of about 5 billion bad software applications, so I was able to replicate them. So what you're going to see today, in some ways, you might feel like we're beating you over the head with, hey, software's bad, software's bad. That's not the case. It's just that the architecture track this year seems to focus on user interface. And the way I look at it is Simon presented one view, which was very valid. And I'm sorry, I forget the Software Sucks guy's name because he named his book so well that I can only remember Software Sucks. David Platt, okay. He had another view, and I have another view. They're not conflicting, though. But we're going to give you different views on the subject from different viewpoints, if you will, and I hope you'll enjoy it. So I have this system that many of you know. This is my friend at the Cyprus Donkey Sanctuary. And I live half the year in Cyprus and half the year in Russia and the other half of the year on airplanes. It's 3 halves of the year, but in Cyprus we had a lot of donkeys because we had a lot of hills and olives, and eventually the donkeys got replaced by tractors and we had hundreds of donkeys. So this couple, they set up a place called the Cyprus Donkey Sanctuary with 300 donkeys. And you can go there and you can feed them carobs and carrots, and maybe you don't like donkeys, but it's a lot of fun. And this is one of the donkeys I adopted. And what I have a picture of him for is, as we're speakers, we get the feedback forms. And some of these places, you fill out paper. And then we get them a couple weeks later, a couple months later, a couple years later. But we like to improve our sessions as we go. And it'd be really cool if we had a system that you could give me live feedback. You could say, wow, I really like that. So when I give this session again next week, which I'm doing in Budapest, I will know by then what sections are really cool and which sections I should take out. And I wanted to give everyone, you know, brand new HTC touches. But then they said there were budget problems. I said they should give them just in your bags. That didn't work, and we could just have a voting system. So what we did was we came up, and when you see something you really like, you just have to say woohoo. Okay? Now some of you know this. Okay, can we get a practice run here? That's not too bad. Do we have any Lost fans? A few. In Spanish, I think it's Perdidos. I was watching it on TV the other day. And it's in English, but they changed the title to Spanish. But it looks like it's in a 1985 Amiga that it did. I think my WPF effect is better. Anyways, we're going to code this session yellow. It's 200. In the spirit of the American terror system, since everything is, you know, terror these days, it's terror alert. It's not how much I'm going to terrorize you, just the level, because I know what software developers do. They look at the title of the session, they never read the abstracts, and in their head they make an abstract. And then they go to the session and say, well, it's not what I thought it was. Of course, you never read the abstract or looked at the level, so here it is. Oh, sorry, it's not yellow, it's blue. It's blue for 200. This is my personal website. I told you a little bit earlier, but don't worry. There's not pictures of my family and those things here. It's my personal geeky website. Actually, it's all the stuff my wife doesn't want on the personal website. Okay, it's got the rocket launcher code. It has the Wiimote code. It has all the pictures from the sessions, those sorts of things. And if you want to know what kudzu is, it's there as well. This is my professional speaking website. If you want to know where I'm going to be, if you want me to come to your place, it's all here. And of course, it's woo-who.net. This is Microsoft Corp, of course, in 1978. I used to work for Microsoft, and a lot of people think I still do. I don't. I'm not an employee. And the reason I have this slide here is to tell you all that I don't work for Microsoft anymore, which, not that they were a bad company to work for, and I'm still doing a lot of work for them, but I'm independent. I can say whatever I want. And in fact, I did when I worked there as well. Unfortunately, in this screenshot, in this picture, they wouldn't let me in because they had minimum hair requirements at that time. This, well, you've probably never seen one this large, but this is an airplane seat. And out of the side of it, you can see are the headphones. Now, I have always been a bit of an efficiency expert, not just in software. Everything I see in the back of my, okay, maybe in the front of my head, in the back of the head, all over the place, I'm thinking, how can I make this better? What sucks about this? What kind of moron designed this thing? At the same point, I'm looking for good things and noting them down and figuring out how I can put them in software. It's just something I've done. I've always been an analytical person. And this one, half of the airlines in the world, for some reason, decided to put the headphone jacks on the side of the armrest. As if the economy seat isn't small enough to begin with, let's take out another centimeter of hard plastic to give you a bruise. Now, some other airlines decided to put it on the end of the armrest, but I just don't understand. Why would someone do this and never bother to test this? And think about the impact of this. I have black marks in my legs from these things. And when you fly as much as I do, they become semi-permanent. Now, I'm also looking out for good things. How many of you, you're sleeping and you want to turn off the jet engine that's above your head, and you have to get out of your seat, stand on your chair if it's a big plane, and try and twist it, and the thing is slippery, so you can't even turn it. Look at this one. How convenient is this? And this was on a big old Russian plane. This isn't even a modern innovation. This thing was done 30 years ago. It's in the back of the seat. I can move it. I can reach it. I don't have to blast my neighbor to death and make him mad. It's just there. Simplicity. Sometimes you don't need something very complex, and sometimes you could look in strange places to find it. Here's another example. I don't know how many airplanes I've been on that actually had electric power, but I didn't know it because it was underneath the life preserver. Here, it's very obvious. Oh, they have electric power. And guess what? It takes European Continental and North American. The British guys are kind of out of luck. They couldn't find a place big enough to put that plug. And I live in Cyprus half the year, so I have the British plugs there too. I know all about it. Incrementalism. Now, what I'm going to do is at various times, I'm going to step back, and again, away from software. And I'm going to show you how we got to where we are today. And the first thing that I like to call incrementalism is exactly this. Now, some of you, I hope, recognize this. Everyone here has running water, right? Okay, so you have one of these devices in your home, maybe more than one. But most of you probably don't have this exact type. This one has two spigots, and it's predominantly in a single country here in Europe. Some of you may be from that place. And I couldn't quite figure out how I'm supposed to use this device, because when I went to the toilet, there was no user manual. And you might think it's a sink. You turn it on, you idiot. Well, of course I know I turn it on. But the problem is the right one comes out freezing cold water because it's not in the warmest of the European countries. And when I turn on the left one, I get semi-lava because unbeknownst to anyone else, even natives, there's an underground volcano which they get their hot water from. So the problem is now I have extremely cold water in the right hand and extremely cold water in the left hand, and I'm trying to figure out what the usage pattern is. Because do I just mix them up really, really quickly? Go back and forth? So actually I went to one of these before I was delivering a session one time, and I went in and the audience said, "Why is your right hand red and your left hand red and the right one blue?" And I said, "Well, I just washed my hands. I'm a clean person." And so I actually asked the audience, I said, "Can anyone please tell me the usage pattern for this device?" And he said, "No, it's simple. You don't understand." He said, "You're supposed to put the stopper in and fill it up and then wash your hands." The problem is this is a public toilet, and the other guy was washing his feet that way. So I prefer not to do that. I just prefer not to do that in a public toilet. I might do this in my house, but certainly not in a public toilet. And for some reason, even if this particular land will build a brand new spanking airport that's the epitome of technology, they'll put one of these in. So they told me, well, 100 years ago we didn't have a lot of water. And I said, it's not 100 years ago. Why do we still have these things? And no one could really answer me. So I kind of backed off and I said, okay, local customs, no problem. But then I went to the airport. And remember I said, even if this country builds a brand spanking new airport, they'll build a big terminal and say, this is what we can do. Look at our terminal. And now I have lost my stopper. So this is actually from the airport. This is no joke. I didn't Photoshop this. I didn't search on the internet. This is in the airport. And I can't quite figure it out. And the reason I show you these sinks is that often, as developers, we look at something. And we say, you know, maybe that's not perfect. You're right, that was designed 100 years ago. Things have changed. The requirements have changed. So we need to make some improvements to it. And we end up with Sink 2.0. When in reality, what we should have been doing is not trying to improve on this. We should look at this and say, it's completely broken, we need to start again. If I had never seen this before, but I wanted to bring water into and wash my hands, how would I do it? Or maybe I should just look to see what the other countries are doing. So we need to just not always improve on, but sometimes we need to start anew. And how we end up with things like this, I'm going to use Microsoft Office. Now I pick on Microsoft a lot, not because I think they're bad, but because I used to work for Microsoft, and if I pick only on, say I only pick on Google and IBM and Java and those sorts of things, people say, well, you're just a Microsoft basher, or anti-basher, you're bashing everyone else. No, don't worry, I'm an equal opportunity basher. I'll bash Microsoft and Sun equally alike. If somebody needs bashing, I'm here. So let's take a look at Microsoft Office. Now, in Word 1.0, which was a very long time ago, we had less than 50 menu items. And as time grew, we had more and more menu items. And somewhere around Word 97, they formed a menu item task team, I think, and things started to explode. Now, the menuing system worked great in Word 1.0. You could find what you wanted. But when you ended up with almost 300 items, it was pretty hard to format a font because you couldn't find it rotate the font and everything else. And we had a problem with task panes and toolbars as well. Now, when we had one toolbar, it was great, but as you grew up there and you ended up with, what is that, 30 plus toolbars, where the heck are you going to put those things? Now, how many of you have seen the Office Museum? Nobody. That's great. Somebody at Redmond actually went out, and inside of Microsoft, they have this internal website which you can download almost anything you want, whether it's new or old. There's even a virtual PC with Bob on it. Anyone see Microsoft Bob? Okay. There's a virtual PC the guys play with once in a while. You know, when they maybe when they make a stupid menu feature, they make them use Bob for a week. I'm not quite sure. But they have this website that you can download any product, and somebody went and made a bunch of virtual PCs and installed every copy of Office from 1.0. And then he made screenshots, and he made a slide deck called the Office Museum. And fortunately, he was kind enough to let me steal it. And I borrowed it, and I modified it, and I used it, and it was great. But I decided to do something a little bit different this time. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take you on a tour, starting at Office 1.0 all the way through Office 2007. Because the whole point behind Office 2007 was, hey, there's too much stuff there. What we're doing is we have a Sync 9.0. We need to reboot on the user interface, and that's exactly what they did. But I'm going to take you on kind of a different tour here, so let's just start out and I'll be quiet for a minute. Now that's what I'm talking about. We started out with a simple concept. We ended up with so many menu bars, so many places. And I saw so many desktops that looked like that, where the user had this much space to write their name. They could write Hello World, and they could do it and spin the font, but they couldn't see anything else. And the Microsoft Office team finally decided it's time for a reboot. Let's pretend there were no menus. Let's pretend there were no toolbars. And what they actually did in Office 2007 is they removed features. They found out we put in this dockable tool feature, but no one uses it, at least not on purpose. So why don't we just remove it? And that's why you can't dock toolbars anymore. It's all been removed. Now, does anyone know how they did this? What they did is they monitored usage data. They brought in customers, and they gave them a sheet of paper. And they said, we want you to do this task. We want you to write a 2-page document that has these features. And then they watched them. And they realized users couldn't find the stuff. And so they decided to make those sorts of things easier. And they came up with a new interface. Now, here's an interesting picture. I believe this is a picture of a DC-7, somebody told me. And you notice most modern airplanes don't look like this today, because they had the same problem. And that's why we have glass cockpits now. That's why in the newer airplanes it's much simpler, and you have a bunch of high-resolution computer screens that switch to task. When you're flying at altitude, you don't see instruments only needed for takeoff or taxi. And the instruments actually change to what you need. So let's discuss a few problems. Garbage in, garbage out. Now, just to kind of drive home the point first, a lot of people say, well, we have mistakes in software. It's not a really big deal. Users can deal with it. So what? Occasionally, they have to restart the program. Occasionally, they have to do a workaround. But the impact is minimal. I don't agree. I could stand up here for 4 hours and show you why it's not minimal. Instead, I'm just going to give you a few cases. One is in Christmas 2004. Now, Comair, those of us from Europe, probably don't know Comair. Comair is actually a fairly large airline. They fly the smaller routes for Delta. So it's like KLM Cityhopper or something, but very big. They have a lot of small jets and small planes, etc. And Christmas is probably a very busy time to fly. In fact, I know it is. I don't fly on Christmas because there's a bunch of crazy people with their in-laws and all their kids. And if you think business travelers get hot, try flying on a holiday. So let's say they're a little bit impatient, they're a little bit irrational, they're tired, those sorts of things. And, well, you go to fly, you get to the airport, you're even in transfer because you've come in on a feeder airline, and oh, all your flights are canceled. Every single flight on Comair was canceled on Christmas, in the middle of the day. Worse yet, it affected another airline. 1,100 flights were canceled, and they couldn't get them back online. I don't remember how long, but I think it was 7 or 8 hours or maybe the next day before they got the flights back online. Why? It wasn't September 11th. It was Christmas, 2004. It wasn't anything like that. There were no terror alerts. Computer error, and it wasn't even flight control. Nothing so big as that. Reservations. The reservation and the scheduling system went down. Now what happened, a worker input incorrect information. Now how many of you have heard of software as a service? I hope a lot of people this week. They're making a really big deal about it. It's not necessarily a new concept. It's a new concept in term, but some companies have been doing this for quite a while. Almost all of the airline reservation systems are farmed out. You rent a system from somebody, and it's not usually even in-house. Sometimes it is. You pay a company, they handle all your reservations and scheduling. So Comair had farmed this out to some company, and this company, being a vertical, also serviced several other airlines. So they decided, oh, well, we have Comair, well, we're going to run US Airways as well, which is one of the largest airlines in the US and one of the largest airlines in the world as well. They didn't separate the two applications. So when the Comair system crashed, it took down US Airways as well. So imagine KLM Cityhopper crashes and takes down Lufthansa. Talk about software isolation. So that was one bad point. The software wasn't even, the systems weren't even isolated. In those airlines, Comair is not even the feeder airline for US Airways. They have nothing to do with each other. Comair is the feeder for Delta. And it was just because a worker input incorrect data. Basically, the software developer didn't do verification, and it was something along the lines of a SQL hack, except the user wasn't even trying. They hit the comma instead of the period, I don't know, and took down 1,100 flights. Now let's forget the impact to people in airports and all the bar fights that broke out and children and all those sorts of things and being stuck with your in-laws. Think about the economic impact of these two airlines. because we couldn't bother to validate it. We couldn't say, hey, that's not the right stuff. Try again. Obviously, the airlines have become way too dependent on computers. Terry Tripler, airline industry expert. That was the top quote that appeared on CNN. Unfortunately, he may be an airline industry expert, but he's a computer idiot. It wasn't the fact that they're too reliant on computers. It was the fact that some airlines are reliant on software vendors who are incompetent. But this gives us a bad name. Because does the general public separate this from anything else? No, I'm a software developer. Oh, you must be an idiot because you're a software developer. Your industry canceled my flight on Christmas, right? And look at the next one. If this kind of thing could happen by accident, what would happen if the bad guys did it on purpose? And they're perfectly right. Who? Let's hire a worker and tell them to put a comma in today. Talk about airport security. All you do is hire somebody. Press the wrong key. Then we'll do something. Or take a look at this one. This one's very valid. This happened just yesterday. I'm tracking a package coming here to me in Barcelona. Now this is FedEx, okay? Yesterday David picked on UPS, my turn to pick on FedEx. Now I actually like FedEx. I've had some problems with some of the other ones, not UPS, but some of the other ones. But I wanted to track my package, and I'm sure it'll get here. So I decided let's put in my email address so I don't have to go to their website and ask them all the time. So you can see I can put in my email address, chad@howard.org. Guess what? Email address is invalid. Do you know how I fix it? Change it to .com. This is FedEx. This isn't like Joe's package service. They can't figure out .org as a valid ending. It's not even one of the new ones. It's not like .biz or .xxx. .org has been there from the inception of the internet. So validation is good. But if you're going to validate things, make sure you validate the proper things. I also have another email address, and this one you can publish, jm@howard.org, junk mail, which I give to a lot of websites. But a lot of websites tell me it's not a valid email address because there's not enough letters before the @ symbol. But it's perfectly valid. There is no rule that says I can make one called J if I want. Why do we make such assumptions that don't exist? If you don't know, find out. This has big impacts. How do I know what my package is going to be here? I want to know. Easily mistaken instructions. Now this is easily probably one of the most important things you can do to improve your user interface. You can still have a butt-ugly interface. Okay? Now a lot of you say, I'm not a designer. I don't have money to hire one. Okay, that's fine. Let it be ugly. Let it be black and white. In fact, you'll get along with a blend team just great. You want to see an expression blend? That's great on monochrome monitors. So black and white is back. You can make it that easy. Everybody can do black and white. But what I want you to do today is make it easier to use. Make the dialogues make sense. And I'm going to show you a couple confusing examples. I could, again, just pick out a bunch of signs in China or Botswana that have been translated poorly. And again, that'd be a funny session. But what I'm going to do instead is, with the exception of maybe 3 slides, which I put in just because they were great, I couldn't resist, I'm going to put in ones that are a bit more real and obvious to us, but they're not just simply bad translations. They're ones that people are aware of, and they were just too lazy to fix, but have big impacts. So I'm flying through the airport, which is my second home, some say my first home. And doesn't matter which one, but it's in Europe, one of the biggest airports here in Europe. And I'm in a hurry, and I'm going through, and those of you that have seen this slide before, you're not allowed to participate. Which way is gate B4? Anyone tell me? If you think it's to the right, raise your hand. If you think it's to the left, raise your hand. Okay, so B4 is to the right, no problem. Now B4 is a half-an-hour walk, but okay. How about gate C4? To the right? To the left? C12, to the right? Left? C13, to the right? To the left? Okay, let's see. So you're right, I'm running through the airport. So I get down there. Well, there's C14, C12, C14. But you know what I don't see? C13. I don't see it. Where did it go? Well, I don't know. In Canada, We don't have a 13th floor. Seriously, I don't know, I've never checked here in Europe if the hotel's a 13th floor, but in the US and Canada, most buildings do not have a 13th floor because no one wants to work on that floor. Oh, you're on the 13th floor, sir. No, I'll change companies now. And hotels don't have it. In the lift, it's 12, 14, 15. So I got down there and I thought, uh-oh, I don't have a gate. I'm looking at my ticket. I'm about ready to board. Where is it? So I'm asking around, and sometimes you don't even speak the language because travelers are from different places. So let's say, okay, I find somebody who speaks English, which isn't a problem, but let's say I didn't speak English. It'd be a really big problem. So 15 minutes to get down there. 15 minutes to find out, oh, there is no gate C13 in this wing. Was it really that hard to maybe say C1 through 12 and 14 to 23? Now, it's on a corner, so I'm coming down the hall. Now, once I see C1 to 23, done. I understand. Why should I bother to look for anything else? It's not that I was stupid. I just saw C1 to 23 and followed the directions. So now, I head down there. Now, thanks to the power of Tablet XP, you can see what this airport looks like. It's not to scale. So I see this sign in the corner. I run down and all those fugly things on the right, that's C gates, except for 13. That's a 15-minute walk. 15 minutes to find out there's no C13 here. 15 minutes to go back with all my luggage. 45 minutes. I get to the gate. Sir, you're late. Duh. And I said, are there a lot of late people to the gate? Yeah, every day. Now she's back there going, what a stupid user he is. When it was really just a bad dialogue. Now think of how many people have missed planes. Now I will tell you from experience a couple weeks ago, this airline, if you missed a plane, if you're transferring, they might help you out. But if you're just arriving, they will make you absolutely buy a new ticket, and they tell you it's the rules. And if you tell them bad sign, or in my case where my train was actually canceled, and another guy, I'm sorry, I was discussing, somebody jumped in front of his train, the airline told him, sorry, that's not our problem. So that has a big impact. Let's pick on the airlines again. Now, it's not that I hate the airlines. It's just most of them are utterly incompetent. And I fly a lot, so statistics. There are some good airlines. And actually, this airline here, you can see obviously which one it is. I like this airline. They're very, very good. But again, everyone can have a few issues. So here I am. I'm about to check in. And there's several check-in desks. So I go up, and I see this sign. Okay, the first part's in Greek. Economy class, all destinations. Now, I can read a little bit of Greek, so I can actually see what that first one says. But if there's also English, I tend not to bother with the Greek. I just read the English. And I'm guessing a lot of people flying to this airport, it's not a small one, it's Athens, they don't read Greek. So if you see this, you see economy class, all destinations. Hey, I'm checking in, right? So I get in the queue, and I'm waiting 20 minutes, get to the front, got my big backpack because I'm going on a backpacking trip. Sir, you're in the wrong gate. Huh? It says all destinations. No, this is Greek all destinations. Only within Greece. Go over there. So now I go over, wait another 20 minutes in line. Now I get to the front. Now I'm not hot. I'm okay because I'm actually not late for my plane. I'm a little upset, but I'm very nice to the guy. I said, I think you might want to consider changing the signs because I went to the wrong line. And I was very polite about it. And the guy says, no, it doesn't say that at all. I said, what, are you kidding me? I took a picture. Here, take a look. And he says, no, in Greek it says. I said, yeah, but how many people here? It's an airport. There's more than Greek people flying through this airport. And I just said, look, I'm not upset. Just give me my boarding pass. But I think that you might want to discuss with management just to change this software sign. And instead of taking that as a cue of, oh, thank you, sir, that's a good suggestion, he decided to argue with me. No, you just don't understand. I'm like, why would you ever do this to a customer, first of all? But second of all, why can't you just take that as a suggestion? If you have a bunch of users doing the same thing, it might appear stupid, but you probably have a problem. It's pointing to something. And I wasn't the only person. There was a whole stream of people every couple minutes coming from the other side. Now, to be fair, what it did is it would switch between the Greek and the English. But even the English isn't exactly clear. Greek destinations, economy class, all destinations. That still, to me, looks like Greek and all destinations, doesn't it? How many of you would go to this if you saw this? Exactly. So my point here is use this as an opportunity. If you have 5 users a day saying, hey, I deleted my file, there might be a problem there. And I'll explain, actually, that's a separate problem, but it's related to this one. Here's a really good one, just so I can pick on Microsoft again. VPC, want to compact my disk. So I go to compact my disk, and one of the first dialogue says, before you compact this virtual hard disk, you must zero out free space on it with a third-party tool that you install in the guest operating system. What? Why can I even click next? What third-party tool? And why did you give me this dialogue if you don't even ship the third-party tool? Does anyone use Tablet XP or Tablet Vista? Okay, enough said why this is a problem. Who moved my cheese? Now, this is a really big problem in software. So we have a keyboard here. This wasn't so much who moved my cheese as who gave me new cheese. And it looks fairly normal. Does anyone notice the addition of some new keys? Now, I don't mind that they've decided to put the power, sleep, and wake on my computer in an accessible place, because 10 years ago, I had to crawl into the desk. So I think it's pretty cool. But I have issue with the placement, because the most frequently used keys on my keyboard are the cursor keys, the page up and page down, and probably are for many, many users. Even IE use page up, page down. But I have to say that the power button I don't use that frequently. And I have to say that I've been a touch typist for more than 15 years. So I know the delete key is the next key above the left key. And if you follow that pattern, you'll delete things, don't worry. So when you think you're adding a new feature, you might want to think about things a little bit. Think about where you place things. It's probably not a good idea to put the delete all data button that doesn't have a confirmation dialog right next to the open file button. Okay? Think about where you're putting things. Think about the frequency, and don't mix them. Infrequently used menu options and buttons on toolbars should not be near very frequently used things. In fact, they shouldn't be as accessible. In fact, the power button should be like on a fighter jet. You know, in F-16s and airfighters, there's a little cap you have to flip up before you can fire the missiles. That's what I want in the power key. You can even make it red and cool. That's a feature. Look like F-16 keyboard. Flip it up, power off. Here's another keyboard from a very popular laptop manufacturer, one of the leading ones. I won't tell you who it is because I don't want to slander them. But it's not some infrequently used keyboard. These exist in widespread. Now, if you look around, it fairly looks normal, except you can't read the keys because the person who uses this keyboard has oily fingers like I did. It's actually not mine. So they've worn off a lot of the keycaps. However, up here, wait a second, isn't that where the delete key goes? Now that's not so bad. I go to delete something, I get the Windows menu. Irritating, but no harm done. But if the Windows key is where the delete key is, where do you suppose they put the delete key? I can't tell you how much garbage I deleted off my drive. And of course, Windows space does something. So does delete space. It answers yes. Why would you ever swap 2 frequently used keys on the keyboard? That and I kept hitting Control-Alt-Windows instead of Control-Alt-Delete. But why would you swap these? Was there some Japanese engineer with too much sake one night and decided, hey, let's swap these keyboards? Now, what's even worse is this company did it several years ago. And you would think, oh, it's a mistake, they change it back. To this day, they still ship this keyboard. Search Toshiba Windows key. You will see millions of hits of users complaining. And there's a black market selling replacement keyboards for Toshibas. Here's another example. Remote control, go to my hotel. I'm tired. I don't want to have to figure out how to use remote control. Power on. But look at the arrangement of numbers. Who decided 4 columns of 3 rows is better than 3 columns of 4 rows? Talk about a brain mess up. But what's the purpose in it? They couldn't rearrange some other buttons? Don't reassign meanings. Now, I was somewhere and I saw this button. And I'm thinking, what does that button do? Should I touch it? I touched it. Okay? got to be careful about touching buttons. But it really wasn't that bad. It's actually the button for the fan. But who would know that? Look at this one. Windows Media Player. I think this is version 9. And I think that skins make a lot of sense in some cases, otherwise they're just bad. So if you maximize Windows Media Player, and then you let it turn off the standard menu items, which it does in many cases by default, it doesn't re-maximize itself, but what it does is it shrinks itself down, and it looks like it fits in the windows behind it. So if you have a bunch of applications open and Windows Media Player on top, and you go, oh, let's close it. Bink. Wait, it didn't go away. Bink. It still didn't go away. And all of a sudden, you notice your taskbar is getting smaller and smaller because you're closing all the applications behind it. Not only does it self-size itself, but they decided to make the icons look cool. You know what? Whatever you want to do inside the window, have fun. But don't mess with these things. It's as if in the car, we're going to put the horn where the turn signal is. So you push down to have the horn. And to turn on turn signal, you push the steering wheel. Don't rearrange them. This is a bus. And unfortunately, several people died in this accident. A lot of them survived, but I think there were 5 or 6 people that died, including the driver, his wife, and a couple passengers. And what's happened here is if you look at the overpass, the bus has flipped over the overpass, but it didn't do it slowly. It didn't gradually just go up, and it wasn't because of wind or anything. What happened was the driver came off of the motorway, came to the top, and all of a sudden realized, uh-oh, I'm on a bridge. And the bridge just tees off. And he couldn't stop, and it was either go off straight or try and turn. And he tried and turn. Either way, he was going off, and it rolled over. And what led to this was this exact highway sign. After the safety agency did a thorough examination of the situation, and some of the passengers survived. It was around 4 o'clock in the morning. The driver was fresh. They'd just done a driver change. He wasn't drunk. He was a very experienced driver. And his wife was actually with him, and everybody said no, he was fine, no heart attacks, no nothing. And what happened is in many cities they have what are called these HOV lanes, commuter lanes, and you can only drive in this left lane. You can see it has what they call black diamond. You can only drive there if you have more than 3 people in the car or you're a bus. So he's driving down this thing at 4 o'clock in the morning. And a lot of times these HOV lanes to stay in the HOV lane, you have to go off to the left and you end up in the middle in these bi-directional lanes. So it's very common for you to be driving the HOV lane and have to go left. Well, it's night. All of a sudden he sees this sign. Now what it means is it actually supposed to mean this is an exit, but it's only an exit if you're in the HOV lane. Don't swerve across 8 lanes of traffic to get to this. But when you drive on the right, it's also very uncommon to have a left exit. So he didn't know. So all of a sudden he's turning left. He's thinking, okay, I'm staying in the HOV lane. I'm entering one of these bi-directional ones. And all of a sudden he realizes while he's driving 160, no, maybe not 160 kilometers, but 140 kilometers an hour, oops, I'm at the top of a bridge. Now, first of all, that's a very bad design exit. And many years ago, I used to actually analyze crash statistics for an agency. But it's a bad exit, but it's also a very bad sign. And in the end, that was what the safety agency ruled was the cause of the accident, was driver error, but facilitated by an unusual exit and a bad sign. So these can have very big effects. And if you think, okay, well, my software is not making road signs. Yes, but our software ends up in many places. It ends up on airplanes. It ends up in airports. It ends up in hospitals. Who knows where the software is going to end up and who it's going to end up using by. The impact could be small. It could be large. Chances are your impact isn't going to be as big as this. However, I hope to drive home to you today that the impacts are bigger than you expect. Don't just write them off. Purpose-driven development. Everyone's heard of TDD and FDD. Well, I'm going to propose PDD. Yeah, but PDD is not a good thing. TDD and FDD are things you want to do. PDD, you don't want to do. The basic idea is here is a picture of an average street. I'm not going to tell you which country it is, but if you go to pretty much any street in this country, it's not uncommon. It's one of the many countries in North America between Canada and Mexico. So what happened here is no one designed this street. One day, these 2 farmers had farms and they wanted to trade goods, so their horses and mules went back and forth and they made a rut. Later on, they had cars in a road and they had to add things to this road. So each of these business owners came to an architect They hired an architect. And they said, I have a petrol station. My company's colors are blue and yellow. Design me a petrol station that my customers won't get wet, they can see how much my petrol costs, and they can get in and out quickly. And then another guy came along and he says, well, I have food. I want to sell nasty tasting, greasy hamburgers at a low price. And everyone designed these components, these objects. And then they just plugged them in. Because even these plots are modular. If you look at them, they're all the same size. And then we needed electricity, so we just threw it in there. And my point here was no one looked at the overall design. There were many, many architects involved. In fact, hey, more architects the better, right? But none of the architects consulted each other. They didn't say, you know, my sign's going to block yours. This might look ugly together. Why don't we see how all of these things function together? No one thought this stuff out. They just plugged it together. Versus something like this. Now, I'm not expecting that your petrol station looks like this, but this is a functional building. One of them is actually the stock exchange. This is something somebody gave purpose. They thought about how it all interacts together. In fact, if you can see those two columns, what they are is they're historical navigation markers. The river actually splits here. And in the old days, before they had radar and GPS, they would light them with gas and there was fire on top, and the ships knew, hey, there's an island, I need to go left or right. Now, if they built those today in the other country, they'd probably just build a big ugly pipe with a light on top. But here they decided, you know, this is something people are going to have to look at during the day. Let's spend a little bit of extra money and make them look interesting. And what's happened now is now they're functionally obsolete. They don't use these anymore, except on special occasions. But they've kept them because of the aesthetics. Security over usability. Now, many of you are encountering this today. Here's an ATM machine. I want to get some cash. Unfortunately, this ATM has been robbed many times. So what the bank decided to do was let's put a gate over it because that'll reduce the robberies down. I'm not quite sure how, but it does. But if you take a look, let's take a look at the gate. Let's look down here at the bottom. Look at these bricks. The distance from this bar to this button is a little over 1 meter. So you better bring a broomstick with you to push the buttons. But the secondary problem is, how do you get your card back or your money? Someone thought, let's make it secure. But they didn't test the usability. So anytime you make a functional change, you move a key, you add a feature, you add security, you need to come back and think about, is it still usable? What other impacts did this decision have? Did it make it more secure? First of all, because sometimes we do things that make it look secure, but it's really not secure at all. And in this case, let's say you didn't even think about that. But let's think of the person in the bank branch noticing, you know, nobody's used this bank machine in the last month. It's functioning. Well, it must be people just aren't visiting that area anymore. No, you need to look for alternate reasons. What changes did we make to our software last month? Why we had this feature that everybody used, and all of a sudden nobody's using it anymore. Well, it's probably not because the users just hated the feature on, you know, the first of the last month. Think about what changes you made to your software. And you need to do this by tracking how people use your software, which is another subject I'll touch on later. More interestingly, this ATM is actually on the side of a police station. So what does it say about the police in this town? Going back to software now. We have the same problem here. Now it's a little bit small, so I'll abbreviate them, but it says the first word is always password should be minimum 8 characters, at least 1 uppercase alphabet, at least 1 lowercase alphabet, at least 1 digit, should not contain the login name. 1 character from the 2nd to the 6th positions must be a non-alphabet character. Should not be words in any language, slang, dialect, jargon, or an acronym. Should not contain the personal information or names of a family. Should not be a common word where the letter O was changed to a 0 and the letter I was changed to a pipe. Should not be a Tuesday with a full moon. Should not, no, okay, I didn't say the last one, but you get the idea here. Let's just examine the time aspect. How long is it going to take you to conform to this policy if you have to change your password once a month? Now, yesterday David he showed how much it takes when there's just 1 click. This is more than 1 click. I'm betting you can lose a half an hour a month to this thing per employee. Now, the secondary problem is, it's actually less secure. If I have to make a password, and this is a real system, I didn't make up this dialogue. And this is actually this isn't a system Microsoft wrote, but this is a system that's running inside of Microsoft, which is a company of 65,000 employees. So multiply a half an hour times 65,000 every month. Now, not all of them use it, but a lot of them do. When I make up a password and I finally succeed, I can't remember it. So now it goes on a sticky note on my monitor. How secure is that? You are actually making your users hate you and less secure. So I have a suggestion. Forget all the funny characters. Tell your users minimum password length 20. Put in whatever you want. I hate my system IT administrator password person. They will never forget that thing. And it's more secure than anything you can ever do here. It's really simple. Most users either turn this off, or let's say you don't turn it off because you're a home user, and you say, oh, Vista makes me more secure with user access control. The problem is they don't know what it does. Every time it pops up, okay. A virus wants to delete your hard disk. Okay. They just click continue. This hasn't helped. There are other things in Vista that have made you more secure. I love the IE7 security model, how it runs in a separate process. But this doesn't help. Where am I? So my older son, I have two sons, came to live with me 2 years ago. And until he came to live with us here in Europe, he grew up in America. So the only countries he could identify were the US, Canada, and Mexico. So I decided to get him this map. And you put flags on it and stuff until I took a little bit closer look at the map. Now, I could never understand why Cuba was such a threat to the United States, but I can see they're really big, and they're really mad because Florida's pointing aggressively at them. And you can see Dominican Republic and Haiti are kind of, off, and I didn't know the Gulf we'd see was there or was renamed a lake. Now, they got that side of the world, and isn't that the Israeli flag over there on one of those things? Now, let's go to our side of the world. Anybody remember the first Gulf War between Iraq and Kuwait? I couldn't understand why Kuwait got taken over so quickly because they're pretty darn big. And I really don't want to get into politics here, but the Palestinian problem, they've always wanted their own state. The problem is they're looking in the wrong place. They're thinking it's here, but they have a really big one over here. So what's the problem? They're just geographically confused. And let's move over here. Now I speak in Egypt a lot. I go to Cairo. And when I was in Cairo, the Egyptians were really surprised to learn they had long-lost brothers. Come up to our place. You can see, is anybody from Eltali? Is anybody from United Dungdom? It actually says that. Those are not my words. My point is here that sometimes you can get things so confusing that nobody can figure out what the heck is what. So I love these kinds of things. Pick your country. First of all, why'd you give me a combo box? And second of all, why'd you lead me all the way down this path if you're only dealing with US people anyways? If you're going to have a dialogue like this, tell people up front. Don't wait until they've ordered and filled out the form and made an account and given you the credit card details to ask you 15 minutes later, oh, we only ship to the US. Or, I won't tell you which company this is either. Now I spent half my year in Cyprus, except Cyprus doesn't exist. Now usually what companies tell me is they say, just pick Greece. Now I can do that sometimes. If I order something and I ship it to Greece, if it's mail, it'll end up in Cyprus. Okay, I just put Cyprus for the city. And then when it gets to Cyprus, it's so small everybody knows where I live, so they just bring it. But it doesn't exactly work when I'm giving a credit card because the bank will say, hey, he doesn't live in Greece. Make sure you have an up-to-date list of countries. And of course, countries are always changing. I mean, within the Balkans and areas, we have new countries in the last 10, 15 years. Cyprus has been around for more than 30 years, though, actually more than 40 years. So you think you could have more than a 40-year-old database? Or I'm flying again, and I've got a really big problem with another airline who denied me boarding because somebody jumped in front of the train and I was late. So I fill out this really nasty form. I'm actually fairly polite. I spend all this time. So now I'm fairly hot, but fortunately I've copied it to the clipboard because I expect it might crash. Web crash, Web 2.0. So I decide, okay, well, let's yell at them by fax. So I'm living in Russia now. Now Cyprus I can kind of understand. It's kind of small. It's only 45, 47 years old. Russia's been around for how many years now? It's how big? You have how many flights a week? Sometimes we present dialogues to users that actually don't mean anything, but they're looking for some meaning behind it. It was 99.96, today's 99.98. Good thing I came out for the sale. The recommended security level for this zone is high. You've chosen a level lower than this. Please choose higher or higher. Okay, that's i.e. marijuana edition. That's the Amsterdam red light version. Skinned. So here I am. I'm not connected to this network, but you can disconnect from it. Okay, how do I connect? Please help us save water. Press the flush button twice. It's not a bad translation. I had a Turkish friend translated it. Basically says the same thing. Vista defragmenter. It's unchecked. Run on a schedule. Yet, scheduled defragmentation is enabled. Okay. Only for dine-in and takeaway. Well, how else can I get it? Proper for 0 to 36 months. For ages 3 months and up. Yeah, okay. Now I'm wondering, what should I do here? Because it's not just a blank dialogue. It has an explanation point. It's important. If I press OK, should I back up in the background? We all love these. In order to complete the uninstallation, the installer, that's great. In order to complete the uninstallation, the installer, shouldn't it be the uninstaller? Has to reboot your system. Fortunately, they were friendly enough to make it a top level window. I can't get rid of it. I can't minimize it. That way I won't forget. This one's fun too. You can actually restart later, but restart later actually just means bug me again in 5 minutes. And bug me again when I'm not looking and I'm typing, and when I press the space bar, you restart now for me anyways. This is my favorite. Click here to turn off without installing, but click turn off to install important updates. Why can't I restart and install? Why do I have to turn off? Is it going to restart now or not? It's one of my favorite things too. You go to a website and you fill it out, and you decide, okay, I'm not living in the US, although all the web developers that work in the US think everybody does. So I've gone through and, okay, US. So now I've picked Cyprus. But I had to come back. It emptied out half the form for me, by the way, and say, oh, you have to pick a state. So I'm like, okay, Kentucky, Cyprus. No, Kentucky's not a valid state. Kentucky's not in Cyprus. So well, they just don't have the right map. If they had my map, Kentucky is in Cyprus. So I had to come back, and I'm looking through the states. What should I pick? So I go all the way down below whatever the last state is, and I have to pick outside US or Canada. Can somebody teach these people about if statements? If I don't pick the United States, can you maybe figure out this for me? Now you would think this isn't a common problem, but living in Europe, you know it is. In fact, I'll pick on some other ones. Here's Adobe. Same thing. Please specify. Here I'm going to fly. Look at my class. Why should I have to open that and pick that? They only fly economy. This airline has no business class. So I'm checking in on Emirates. Passport expiry date. You know what? My passport expired in 2013, or expired, it expired last week. Electronic check-in. I think I'll renew it on the way to the airport. What are you going to do if my passport is expired? So I'm going to park. Wait, 2,100 millimeters. Will my car fit? Now, granted, I could probably do the mental math fairly quickly to convert from meters. I know approximately how many meters high my car is, but I don't know how many millimeters it is. And when I'm driving, I don't expect to have to figure it out under pressure. There were big, huge tire skid marks here from people slamming. How many millimeters is my car? And I'm pretty sure there were accidents from people behind him who hadn't seen the sign yet. Was it so difficult? I mean, I really can't. This one totally blows my mind. Because in software, I can kind of forgive people. But I can't forgive who would ever design this sign and say, let's put it in millimeters. And I'm pretty sure it was software driven. Probably somebody has a template somewhere. We have height signs and we'll price them all in millimeters, and just it didn't do the conversion. So it probably was a software bug. Here, picking on software again. So I have Windows XP Tablet Edition. I'm on the character pad. Size of writing spaces between 5 millimeters and 50 millimeters. Let's click on the writing pad. Now we've gone to inches. It's the same dialogue. One tab has millimeters, one tab has inches. And it's actually the same measurement. Here's a good one. Here's my train. Doesn't matter where it's going to Istanbul. This is the time and the platform. My train's late. They can't tell me when it's going to be here, but it's 275 minutes late. So people riding trains are definitely the most intelligent of people, and they're always, never lubricated. They never, have alcohol near them. So they're always really good at math. So how many hours is 275? Okay, that's 4 hours and 35 minutes. Add that to 21:55, carry the midnight. Is it so difficult just to tell me what time my train's actually going to come? And I'll blame this on software too, because it's driven by software. So I'm flying another airline, got a problem, click contact. What the heck country is that? Well, it's a Spanish airline, must be Spain. In fact, 952 is a common extension for mobile phones here. So, okay, 003474, that doesn't work. This is actually a Russian number. They just didn't format it. It should be +7 space, and then 4952 is Moscow. But even though I know this, I didn't recognize the phone number because of the way they formatted it. And they don't tell me it's for Russia. There's nowhere on here it says Russia. This probably, I can't tell you how much grief this actually caused me. This one here, about 44,842 days. Can't they just tell me how many years? I mean, I don't, when you get that big, I don't think in days. Let's get a little more relevant. How many of you have seen this? I love this. Feedback can only be submitted on these sessions 15 minutes from the beginning of the session until 720 minutes after the end. Woohoo! How many of you think, okay, 12 hours, but you have to think that out. Couldn't the guy say 12 hours after? In the feedback forms, in the comments, put why is it 720 minutes? Let's see what they do. These two have nothing to do, but they're just kind of funny. Now, some of you may recognize this city. Now, I'm not saying when you translate or you come up with an acronym or a product name, you have to check every language on the planet, because everyone knows Vista means something funny in Hindu, right? I can't say what it says in English, but it means something. And there was a car called the Nova, which didn't go over real well in Mexico. They didn't sell it in Spain because Nova means no go. Who wants to buy a car that doesn't go anywhere? But you should at least check English. And it's not because I'm an Anglophile. It's just that English is so widely spread. Can you imagine this guy's resume? I was the fart technician. I was the fart manager. I spent 4 years at Fart. Or, back to software, this is actually from the Zune. Now, I don't understand why the Zune is not outselling the iPod. I have yet to get my Zune to have this effect on anyone. But, look at her. I didn't put sounds on those two slides. I figured it's too risky. Now, all of the pictures, almost all the pictures are mine except a few. This one's not mine, but almost every other picture in here has been mine. This picture, many of you have seen, and it's, of course, a donkey that's overloaded. Now, who would we blame? The guy on the right is the user. The guy on the left is the developer, because he's looking at him going, what a stupid idiot user. He overloaded his donkey. There's going to be donkey damage. And you know I like donkeys, so I'm not too happy about donkey damage. So we could look at this and say, stupid user. And we can have a laugh. You can always laugh at them in private. But I'm saying that we should look at this and say, yeah, the user did do something that's not quite correct. Okay, I can laugh now. But that's happening all the time. that special waving effect, by the way, is WPF wave effect. It's the wave transform, comes in .NET 3.5. But we could look at this and say, could we do something about this? Yeah, right, it is the user's fault, but couldn't we make that axle movable? It's not going to increase the cost of production of this device very much, but it's going to allow the user to use our product in more flexible situations because they can move the axle. These are the kinds of things we need to look at. And yes, we laugh, but when we laugh, you need to start to code that. Ha, I laughed. What can I do about that? Is that an opportunity for me to fix the interface in my software or change it in some way? Now, you might say, I'll laugh less, so I want that because I like to laugh. Don't worry me. In addition to making good user interfaces, many users are stupid, okay? You will help the better ones, but you'll still have stupid users to laugh at, no problem. They don't seem to be going out of style. So another example of how we got here. If cars were software, and I'm low on time, so we gotta go kind of quick. Now here's a car. Now, everyone here is building software, I hope, or just couldn't find another good session to go to. Anyways, welcome. If you were building software, what kind of car would it be? Think in your head. Is it a BMW? Is it a Ford Focus? Is it a Trabant? What kind of car is it? I want you to think about that right now. What kind of car are you building? Might be a sports car. But your users might think it's something like this. This is component architecture. Somebody said, I want a caravan with a sunroof. And so one developer built a sunroof, one developer built a caravan, and they put it together at the end. It's component development. Worse yet, sometimes we might produce something that the user might not be able to identify. I'm not sure if it's a boat or a car or an airplane, but I know that it moves around. I've never actually seen it move, but it's within a couple kilometers of my house, and I've seen it in different places, and sometimes it's not even there. But what do our users really want? Do they want faster and faster software? Because that's what we keep trying to develop. We keep trying to say faster, faster, faster. Now they will probably come to you and say, I wish the report didn't take 8 hours, but they probably don't come to you and say, I wish this dialogue came up in 300 milliseconds instead of 320. And that's the kind of stuff we spend 8 hours optimizing. Hey, 300 milliseconds! Most of them want safer software. Now, let's say we've said we built a BMW. Now, it doesn't matter if you pick Mercedes, whatever. I'm hoping none of you picked Trabant or those ones. We picked something decent, at least, Ford Focus level. So assume we decided to build a BMW. The problem is that there are many types of BMWs. Let's take a nice BMW. This one's fairly nice. And it's state-of-the-art for 1960. So some of us are building nice BMWs, but we're building 50-year-old BMWs. Because did this car, do you think it had seatbelts? I don't know about this one, but most cars in 1960 did not have seatbelts. Do you know why? Car manufacturers said, if we put seatbelts in our cars, because race car drivers had seatbelts, they said, if we put seatbelts in our cars, it will send a message to the public that our cars are unsafe, they need seatbelts. That was marketing interfering again with the developers. The developers said, seatbelts, seatbelts. How about anti-lock brakes? Airbags, safety glass. These are all safety devices because the automotive industry in the late 70s and early 80s got really, really serious about safety. We have yet to do that in software. Yes, we are making some steps. Moving to managed code is probably the biggest step we've taken. Yes, some of us are doing testing. Yes, some of us are doing feature-driven development. Yes, some of us are doing formal development methodologies. We are making progress. But I'm telling you, most of you think, oh, we're super advanced, software is safe. No, we're in the late 70s right now where the car manufacturers are. We're just starting to learn what's working and what's not. And most people aren't practicing it. We need to move farther along. We don't even have things, I mean, what's the most important thing in this car that's missing? The sound system, right? So let's say we have built something a little more like this. You could also have adequate safety features. I mean, look at this one. This is actually something that I thought I would never see in my life again. I was visiting a country, and I was in a small village, and this was before digital cameras, and one of these things would chug by every once in a while. And I thought, oh man, I want a picture. Went back to the country 10 years later, different city, and one passed me on the highway. You can see what they have. Anyone can see what this is up front? It's a saw blade. They actually don't have a car, so what they do is they cut wood by day, they take their steam engine off and wrap the belt around the axle and just go down the road, and they have a rope to steer the wheels. Hey, more power to them. They're very creative. But you can see this one even has safety belts. It has 2 speeds, go and stop. It has seat belts. It has airbags. But they're not adequate. So what can we do to solve this problem? Now, if you went to Simon's sessions yesterday, he showed you some ways that Microsoft is working on solving some problems. And one of the ones I liked was the Vista smiley. He said during testing of Vista, they gave some users in the system tray a green smiley and a red frowny. And when they saw something they liked, they clicked or disliked one of the things and it sent a screenshot. That's great. But again, let's take some real world examples. So here's a do not disturb sign. Now if I see that, okay, do not enter, but I'm going to go up and read it, do not disturb because I'm sleeping, do not disturb. Yeah, but it's fairly clear. But you could be a lot more clear. Now, I think he's going like this, mind the door, but I'm not quite sure. It could be the other one. Really don't bother me right now. Now, I was kind of dumb. I took a picture of it. I should just taken the thing with me, but this was in Elterly. So here's another one. Now, I don't care if you smoke or not, just as long as you don't smoke right next to me. But this is a standard no smoking sign. It's very pictorial. It's very good. There's no misinterpretation of this. And usually we put it on places like doors. But if you're a smoker and you go into a hotel and you saw that in a door, you might forget. Hey, I'm going to light up anyways. Or just, you don't notice, you don't care. But what about this? I love this because what they did is they said, you know what? We're going to put the sign where a smoker will see it. In fact, we're even going to put an ashtray in a non-smoking room. When I first got there, I said, I want a non-smoking room. I thought, oh man, there's an ashtray in here. And I went up and thought, oh, cool. Because that's the first thing, if you're going to light up, you're going to go grab the ashtray and go, oh man, I can't smoke. Now, again, I don't care if you smoke or not, as long as it's not in my room. But we put it where the user expected to see it. Another keyboard. Look at this keyboard. They're little LEDs, and they can change. So here we have English, Russian, paint shop, Doom. I don't know what it is, but now this keyboard is just a prototype. Everyone asks me, when's it going to ship? The problem is it's very expensive, but a couple months ago, because this has been a prototype for many years, or a concept, I should say, they're starting to ship them. They announced it around 2 or 3 months ago, but it's black and white because the LEDs are so expensive right now in that number. It's around $1,200. But I would expect in a couple years, this keyboard, as the technology becomes cheaper, you'll see these. And even if it costs $200 or 200 euros, I would probably pay that for it. I wouldn't pay $1,200, but actually, if they're going to price it in dollars and the dollar keeps going down, we'll be able to buy it anyways. It won't matter. Failed attempts. Do I have to say enough about this? This was an idea that Microsoft loved when it came out. Now, they were man enough to stand back and say it was a bad idea and they got rid of it. But this was an attempt where we tried to make it easier on the user, and all we did was annoy them. Now, how many of you are Lost fans again? Only a few people. You've seen all the way through the end of season 3, right? And we still have never, ever seen the full monster. The monster is Clippy. You'll see it in season 4. Clippy comes out. UAC. You know what I think about this. And again, Vista does have some things that increase your security, but UAC is not one of them. Expanding menus. These were fun. I use a feature once a month. It was there last month, but not this month. Where did it go? And that's exactly what users thought too. But this was an attempt to deal with 400 menu items. So sometimes you do have to fail, but test your stuff before you throw it on the public. Real steps forward. This is IE7. How many of you used to open a zillion tabs? Okay, before IE7 you couldn't open tabs unless you had an add-in, but you'd open all these windows and you couldn't really see what you had. If you're like me, you go to your search engine of your choice and you open up a bunch of tabs. Later on you come back and no, I don't want that, no, I don't want that, no, I don't want that. With IE7 and of course other browsers, you can hit Control-Q and you get a preview of everything you were looking at. And then you can say, I don't want that, I don't want that, or I want that. It's a very visual way to solve things. Of course, Office 2007. Now, some people have complained that it takes too long to learn. Most users will learn it in a couple days. Microsoft's done studies, and they know the average user will be 2 weeks, but then they're more productive. And I'm almost out of time. This is actually great because it sends all the error reports, and Microsoft analyzes these. And you can build this into your software. You can sign up for this program where every time your program crashes, it sends it to Microsoft, and Microsoft will send you the results. Okay? More ideas. This is something from Tablet Edition. What I want to do is if I want to reassign, say, hotkey 2, I have to say, oh, that one's hotkey 2, and then I have to find hotkey 2. Why can't I just click here? Wouldn't that be so much better? That's just a small example how you can look at something simple. Another thing, I wanted to spend a lot of time here, but I'm actually out of time. So what I wanted to do was build a .NET framework that measures, you put it in your application, and it measures things like how long did the user move the mouse? How far did the mouse travel between actions? And record usage data. And that's something you can watch my blog for, but I really believe watching and collecting data, that's how Microsoft did it with Office 2007, that's how we're going to find out stuff too. We're going to find out menu options that are never ever used. There's a product called Moray. I haven't looked at it too deeply. It does something similar for websites. You might want to take a look at. And what I want to do here is do the closing. And I hope you guys will forgive me 5 minutes into your break, right? Okay. So what I wanted to do is I have the next slide is a closing credit, but I want to ask you to stick with it through it because I have 2 more things after it. Okay? So just stick with me. This is kind of the end of almost the end. What I want to do is review, just to show you everything. Was that not the best review? Okay. Okay, if you don't know about TechNet, TechNet's cool. And I have 2 more things after this, so bear with me through this. This was all done in WPF, by the way, the whole deck, including all the effects. Okay, I have one more thing. Don't worry, it's not this. One more thing after this. Okay, I'm going to go fast, but if you want to bring me to your event, contact me. There is a secret code here. If you want to win the prizes, everyone wants to win the HTC Touch and the Fujitsu server, right? The secret code is 999, but you have to input it in a special way. You don't pick up your phone and send an SMS anywhere. You go to this form, you fill in 999. This will help you win. Okay? You can also fill in woohoo, because it always confuses the conference organizers why this guy's getting so many woohoos in the comments. Last thing, what did you guys think about the session? Woohoo? You guys aren't very loud. I mean, come on, I was at Java 1. They smoked you guys. Even the COBOL guys, come on.
I can't hear you.
Oh, a little better. Okay, well, you slightly beat the COBOL guys. But... Okay, that's it. Thank you. Please fill out your evaluation forms.